In this video, we'll be going over the continuation of the C# video tutorials. So csharp.net. So I've set up a form here. You're going to need this form. So you can just use the drag and drop. So it's just faster in the drag and drop. So just to demonstrate some more inheritance and classes and object stuff. So I just use a drag and drop. We'll do the layout lab later on. So here, this control. So there's 4 text boxes here, 4 labels, and 1 button. So this text box is called account number text box. This one's called interest rate text box. So the name property, I mean, for these text boxes. The third one down is called balance text box. The fourth one down is called maturity date text box. So this is a label here. It's the exact same thing, so whatever the control here is, it's just going to say label instead of text box. So account number label for the first one. Excuse me. So this one's interest rate label. Third one's balance label, and the fourth one is maturity date label. And the button down here, it's create object button, so it's similar to the last lab that we did. So you're going to need 2 classes as well. So this one's called savings account. The namespace is just the auto-generated namespace. And you'll need another one called CD account, which is supposed to stand for certificate of deposit. So we'll start with the savings account class. This may take a while to do because there's a lot of information. Not that much, but it'll take a while, I think, to set up at least the classes. Okay, so the first one, it's called savings account, so we're in the other class here. So I'm just going to redo this here. So namespace, WindowsFormsApp32. Then here we'll have public class, savings account. We'll have 3 backing fields. So a private string underscore account number. We'll have a private decimal underscore interest rate. And a private decimal balance. So here we'll have a public savings account. So this constructor is not going to have any parameters. I don't think there is a constructor here that'll take parameters. So we'll just set the account number to 0 to start. And we'll set the interest rate backing property to 0. And then the balance backing property to 0 as well. Sorry, the account number should be an empty string. We're storing it as a string. We'll probably have to use try parse or parseInt later on. So here we'll have the account number property. So remember, we're just going to reference public, the name without the underscore. Then we're not going to have parentheses. Sorry, we're going to have the type here as well. The public string account number. What's happening with that? I did something to my keyboard, sorry. Hey, there's some kind of shortcut that changes it to another language. Okay, so here we'll have, we'll say get, then we'll return underscore account number. Then we'll say set. Then we'll say underscore account number points of value. Then the next one is interest rate property. So we're setting up the properties here. So here we'll say get, and we'll say return, we'll return underscore interest rate. Then here we'll say set, we'll say underscore interest rate points to value. Then the last one here we'll have, what's the last one here? Balance. So we'll say public decimal balance, open a block, and then we'll say get, open a block, return underscore balance. So just return the backing field. We've talked about this in the in a previous video in the csharp.net playlist on my channel, so you can just look back on that playlist if you're stuck. Then here we'll say set, we'll say underscore balance points to value. That should be everything, so not that long. So we'll do the next one now. Class CD accounts. We're gonna use inheritance here. So we'll just do this again. So we'll say namespace WindowsFormsApp32, open a block, public class, CD account. Inherits from. Savings account. So we'll just have one backing field. We'll say private string underscore maturity date. We'll have a constructor here. So we'll say public CD account. No parameter, so a parameterless constructor. Constructor, you just reference a class name with parentheses. And then we'll say underscore maturity date points to an empty string. And we'll just have one, actually these classes didn't take that long, so we'll just have we'll do the property for maturity date, so we'll reference the type, so public, then the type is string. So remember, properties are going to be, not backing fields, but properties are going to be public because they're supposed to be accessed outside the class. So we use private here for the backing field, for encapsulation, to secure the fields so they're not accessible outside the class, but they are in a way through the properties, but you actually can't change the actual backing field. So here we'll have public string. So I've discussed all that in the csharp.net, it might be called Visual csharp.net playlist, everything about properties, so you guys can check that out. So I pretty much talked about that before, so you guys can just check it out if you want. So here we can have a public string and then maturity data, maturity date. So we'll just open a block. Then here we'll say get, Then here we'll say return underscore maturity date. Then here we'll say set, and then we'll say underscore maturity date points to value. That's it for this class. We'll start with the other class here. So this is going to be the Form1 class. You can change it to, well actually I think it's a partial class. So you can change that to main form if you want. I'm just going to keep it as Form1, so we'll just start with that here. So there is a button. So there'll be the create object button. So this class is kind of long, not too bad. Actually, it's not that long, but take a little bit to do. So we have that button that we did before in the designer. Create object button, so we're just going to reference that in the class. So I'm just going to go into the constructor here and say create object button. Dot click plus equals new event handler, passing in create object underscore click. So create object button dot click, so we want to access the dot click event, plus equals new event handler, takes parameter create object button underscore click. I think that's just the name. That should be just the name of the actual event handler. So here we'll just go, we'll define that. So we'll say private create object button underscore click takes parameter object. Something didn't happen there. Whoops, sorry. Public private void here. There we go. And then here we'll say object sender comma event argc. Okay, so under we'll just move that below. And here we'll just have another method here. So we'll say private get cd data. Sorry, I should have a type here. So private void get cd data takes parameter. It takes a cd account object. Named account basically doesn't really matter what the name is. And remember, if you're finding it difficult passing objects as a parameter, you can use the ref keyword if it's not working. So in this case we don't need to. But if you're finding it's not working, you can always try the ref keyword. That means putting the ref here, like that, and then putting the ref keyword in the argument as well when you call the method. Okay, so here we'll have temporary variables to hold interest rate and balance, so just local variables. So we'll say decimal interest rate, decimal balance, so we're going to reference the object passed in as parameter. We're going to access its account number property, so we'll say account number points to account number text box dot text. So account number points to account number text box dot text. So account dot. So we have an account number property in the savings account. But CD, we instantiated a CD account object which inherits from savings account, which still has access to these properties as well, because they're public. If they're private, it wouldn't have had access to them. If it was protected, it would have had access to them. But the CD account object wouldn't have access to these backing fields though. So you just have to be careful with what you're trying to access. If you can't access it, try a different access modifier, but try to keep it as secure as possible. Okay, so we have account.account number points to, so referencing this account object, referencing the account number property, we're pointing it to the account number text box.text. So this is getting the data that's being passed into the object from the graphical user interface. So when we enter something here, this is the, can't really see what that says, account number text box, I think. So account number text box, that data will, the data from the graphical user interface when the user of the app enters the data into this text box. Then we're saying, okay, well, we want to have this account object, the account object's account number property point to the data that was entered into the text box by the user. That's what's happening. So that's pretty much the same theme with the rest of the text boxes here. So we get the account number from the text box that the user enters, and then we have, this is common stuff. For example, if you have like a web form or something, you can do it in JavaScript or whatever. It's the same idea. You could do the same thing in Android. You could do the same thing in iOS. You could do the same thing in React or something. It's the same concept. You enter something to a text box. You pass it to the object. Here you could say, for example, account.maturityDate. So we're saying that the account's maturity date property is going to point to the maturity date text box.text. Now remember some of them. So let's just have a look at the account number property and the maturity date property. So the account number is a string, so you can pass that directly from a text box to a string property, because our account.account number property is a string, and a text box is a string. The maturity date, I guess, would be a string as well. So the maturity date property is a string, so we can directly pass that from the text box to the maturity date property. But for the other two, we're going to need a try parse because it's a decimal. So we're going to have to try parse decimal.try parse, I think, or something like that. We're going to try to pass the string as a decimal. Yeah, so it is decimal.try parse. So here we'll say if decimal.try parse. We'll pass in the, what are we trying to pass in? We're trying to pass the interest rate. We're trying to pass the interest rate, which is a string, dot text property. So the interest rate interest rate text box dot text property as a string. And if that's successful, the value gets stored in the interest rate decimal, or local decimal, that we define in this method. If it's false, it'll store -1 in that variable, and this block will get skipped because the boolean will return false. So if it's true, we'll say account.interest rate points to interest rate. Then here we'll do another one for the balance text box. So we'll say if decimal.try parse. passing in balance text box dot text, then comma out balance. And if that's true here, we'll say that we want to so if decimal.try parse passing in balance text box dot text comma out balance, and we'll say account dot balance points to balance. Then here we'll say else. We'll say message box dot show the invalid balance. We'll just say error invalid balance, so we'll just show an error message if that returns false. If the try parse returns false, then there's an invalid, probably a type. We'll just say that that works fine. That underneath this if here, we'll also have another error message. We'll do the same thing. Don't think you need a space for the first one, for the first part of the string. It's up to you if you want to do that. Okay, so now I'll just do the button. So the create object button, when the button clicks, so when the control button is clicked, the event handler is going to listen and then respond to the. It's going to wait for the button click. When the button click happens, it's going to respond to the button click. So what do we want to happen when the button gets clicked? That's what's happening here. This handles the button click. So we'll say that we want to create a CD account object named account, points to new CD account. This is just object instantiation. So then here we'll call get CD data. We'll pass in a account object that we just, the account object that we just created. Because remember, this method takes a CD object as an argument or a parameter, and we just pass it in. Then here we'll just set the labels. So we'll say account number label dot text property, because we want to set the text property of the account number label, points to account dot, we can reference the properties, so remember account, for the account object that we passed in, which is right here, we stored everything in the properties for, because remember that account object has properties, and here we stored all the data passed in from the text boxes that the user entered into the properties, into the properties. Now we're just setting the labels to whatever those properties were, so it's the object data here, pretty much. So we'll just do the rest for the rest of them. So interest rate, label.text, points to account dot interest rate. Actually here, we're going to call it .toString because interest rate property was a decimal as well, I think. Yeah, it was stored as a decimal. It's stored as a property, but as a decimal within the object. So in that case, we have to cast it to a toString to set it to a text, to a label. So label's text property is a string. So then here we'll pass. We could just format it as well. pass in a C. That should take the error away. Yeah, it did. Okay, so then we'll just do the rest. We'll do that for the next one as well. So we'll say balance label dot text points to count dot balance label. Oops, sorry. Count dot balance dot to string, passing in a C as a currency string. Then here we'll just set the maturity date label dot text property points to account dot maturity date. Okay, that's it. So pretty much I'll just run it just to check what's happening. So you won't see the pop-up, but I'll just explain what's going to happen. So let me just see what we're supposed to enter here. So you can just save and run. I just click the save and then I hit Control S and then click the run button at the top right corner. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it popped up. We could have, for the labels, we could have maybe put a border style on it and just added an empty text, or we could have just set the labels to, for example, account number, interest rate, balance. So remember, the first one's account number here, second one's interest rate, third one's balance. The maturity date is whatever you entered, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to enter, for the first part, I'll just enter an account number. So remember, it's a string. What was the maturity date? That was a string too, I think. So remember, a string can take any symbols. Oops, let's go back here. Okay, so here I'm going to enter some account number, 23456. Interest rate, we'll just say 0.05. Balance, just some random balance. Then here we'll have just a date. If we go with, I don't know, we could just go with some random date here. Okay, so I'll just hit create. There we go. So what happened is that it just showed 2356 in the label there. And then it showed 0.05 in the label there. 0.05. It showed the balance there in the third label as a currency. And then it showed the date as the date. So I entered a slash for the date as well. So that's the end of the tutorial. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. In the next video, we'll be continuing with inheritance and then moving on to polymorphism. So if you want to see the rest of the csharp.net videos, it's on my channel in the csharp.net playlist. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Thanks.